A homeless man sits quietly on the train, enjoying a moment of calm. That peace is shattered when a group of young thugs enters the wagon, their presence disruptive as they bump into two passengers. It's clear they're looking for trouble. One passenger pulls out a gun, but the gang's leader, Anton, remains unfazed. Confident and bold, Anton and his crew intimidate the others, forcing them to leave without a fight. Afterward, Anton casually mentions to his friends that they'll be moving weapons this week. Anton decides it's the perfect chance to cause more chaos, attempting to steal the man's alcohol, but the man grabs his hand and holds it firmly, his grip unshakable. This is no ordinary homeless man. His name is John Reese, a seasoned special agent with a history of intense action. Anton struggles to free himself, but John's iron grip doesn't budge. Finally, John lets go, but Anton isn't done yet. Smirking, he mocks John, sarcastically saying he should have brought enough alcohol to share with the entire group. These young thugs have no idea who they're dealing with, which explains why they foolishly tried to corner John. But John moves with lightning speed, expertly taking them down, breaking their hands, kneeing them in sensitive spots, and striking their throats just hard enough to leave them gasping for air. All five troublemakers end up at the police station. Officer Carter reviews the security footage before entering the room where John is being held. She jokes, saying he should have done her a favor and landed a few extra punches on those punks. Carter tries to spark a conversation, but John stays silent. Thinking quickly, Carter devises a plan to uncover his identity. She casually offers him a fresh cup of water, smoothly swapping out his old plastic cup with a new one. She handles the cup with extreme care, touching only the inside instead of holding it like most people would. Carter excuses herself and hands the cup to the forensic expert. The forensics guy scans it for fingerprints and runs them through the police database. The results reveal John's true identity, linking him to multiple crime scenes. They also discover 4 active arrest warrants for him across 4 different countries. Clearly, John is a man with a long and dark history, filled with secrets and danger. Though Carter is desperate for answers, John is abruptly released by a mysterious lawyer. The lawyer escorts him to his employer, Harold Finch, who insists on speaking with Reese. Finch, a wealthy man with unparalleled access to information, knows every detail of John's past, even his attempts to drink himself to death. He offers John what he's been missing, a purpose and a job. Finch takes him to the heart of New York City, revealing that someone dies every 18 hours there. But what if they could change that? Finch claims to possess a list of individuals about to be involved in crimes. He directs John to a woman named Hanson, warning that something significant will happen involving her. A twist: Finch doesn't know if the person on the list is the victim or the perpetrator. He tasks John with shadowing Hanson, uncovering the truth and saving the innocent. John, however, remains skeptical, convinced Finch is just a wealthy stalker, obsessed with his ex-girlfriend. Unmoved, John walks away, leaving Finch's offer behind. Harold's men attempt to stop him, but John effortlessly takes them down in mere seconds. Later, Reese spends time in a hotel, shaving to alter his appearance. That night, Finch sets him up by playing a recording of a murder that occurred 3 years ago, right in the hotel room next door where John is staying. Finch jokes, saying John is too late, just as he was too late for his friend Jessica. This revelation hints that Reese once had a girlfriend he loved and lost. Though furious, John snaps, "What the hell do you know about it?" Finch calmly replies, "It's the truth." Despite his anger, John is convinced to work with Finch, realizing they could save lives by teaming up. Harold takes him to a secret operations center, where John discovers Finch's list doesn't contain names, but social security numbers of people potentially involved in crimes. John gets to work, narrowing Hanson's enemies down to 2 suspects: Wheeler, her ex-boyfriend and co-counselor, and Pope, a gangster she sent to prison. John follows Hanson closely, attending Pope's trial, where Detective Fusco gives his statement. After the trial, Hanson scolds Fusco for going off script without her knowledge. Later, she visits Pope in prison, telling him she believes he's innocent of the crime he's accused of. Through a microphone planted in her phone, John learns Pope has a younger brother, Michael, whom he's protecting. It becomes clear Pope is lying about the murder to shield Michael, who witnessed the real killers in action. The next day, Wheeler enters Hanson's office, searching her computer for information about Mike. John grows suspicious, believing Wheeler is involved. That night, the bad guys track down Michael first, but John intervenes, firing a grenade launcher at their truck. Reese saves Michael and steals badges from the attackers, revealing they're dirty cops. John begins surveilling them and discovers they're working with Fusco. These corrupt officers kill witnesses to silence them, while Fusco frames innocent people to send them to jail. Determined to uncover more, John presses Finch about the list. Finch reveals that after 9/11, the government hired him to build a machine that collects data from cameras and microphones nationwide. The machine generates 2 lists, one for potential terrorist threats and another for other crimes. Finch created a backdoor to access the second list, but all they receive are social security numbers, leaving them to piece together the details. John continues his mission, convinced Hansen is in danger. However, it turns out Hansen is collaborating with the dirty cops who killed Pope in his cell the previous night. Hansen orders the corrupt officers to eliminate Wheeler as he's digging too deep. Meanwhile, Fusco ambushes John, holding him at gunpoint. John escapes Fusco's custody as he's being taken to the desert to be executed and returns to New York. Just as the dirty cops are about to kill Wheeler and frame a thug for the murder, John arrives in time to stop them. He then deals with Hansen by manipulating audio recording to expose her. Finally, John blackmails Fusco into working for him, knowing he'll need an insider to help his cause. A few days later, John steps into an elevator and strikes up a conversation with a man named Bill. He casually asks if the flowers Bill is holding are for his wife, but Reese already knows the answer. He begins to explain how some women walk away when they discover infidelity, while others hire men to stage robbery gone wrong. With that, Reese swiftly takes out the 2 thugs tailing Bill and advises him to call a good divorce lawyer. The next day, the machine generates a new number for Harold and John to investigate. This time, it belongs to a girl named Teresa, but her case is anything but ordinary. Harold takes John to a cemetery, revealing that Teresa is supposed to be buried there. Her father, a once successful real estate developer, lost everything when the market crashed. Driven to madness, he killed his family during a weekend trip before turning the gun on himself. Harold explains that the machine sees everything, so if Teresa's number appeared, it means she's alive. Reese visits Fusco to retrieve the case file from the police, and Fusco reluctantly obliges. After reviewing the file, John tells Finch this was a professional hit. The killer made it look like the father was responsible, point blank. Harold is intrigued, asking how John knows this. Reese simply replies, "It's the way I would have done it." Using Finch's technology, they track Teresa down. John goes after her, but she's sharp and manages to evade him. Later, John visits Harold in an office, where it's revealed Harold owns the company and works there to blend in. John hands Harold a small device Teresa left behind, a gadget that records credit card information from ATMs. It turns out Teresa survives by stealing card details and withdrawing money. Reyes roams the streets, gathering intel on the hitman who took the contract on Teresa's family. He learns a man called Solnick carried out the job but got jailed for a separate case. John visits Solnick and questions him about sparing the girl. The hitman replies that he follows a strict code, never harming kids. Instead, he warned the girl to stay silent or face consequences. Reyes pushes for the client's name, but Solnick insists they met once, dealt in cash, and used no names. Meanwhile, Teresa attempts to sell banking data online, allowing Finch to trace her. Reyes finds her, but is ambushed by an assassin sent to kill her. John intervenes, saving her and taking her to a hotel. She confesses that her father blamed Uncle Derek for the attack. John tracks Derek, uncovering his role in hiring 2 major contractors to eliminate his brother, securing land set to increase 40-fold in value. Now, Teresa is targeted since her survival threatens their claim. John locates one contractor and smashes his car with a massive truck. Reyes demands he cancel the hit, but the man says it's too late. At the hotel, the assassin hunts Teresa as Harold sneaks her through the fire escape. Just as the killer corners them, John arrives and takes him out. The next day, John contacts Agent Carter, signaling it's time to meet. She arrives with secret officers, only to find Teresa. Carter escorts the girl to the station, reuniting her with her aunt. She probes Teresa for information, but the girl, traumatized, claims she remembers little about her savior. In the end, John returns to Harold's office, only to find he has relocated. When John calls him, Harold quickly reminds him that he is a private person and insists that Reese should not call him. Harold will only reach out when necessary. There's little time to rest, as the machine soon assigns them a new number. Finch discovers the number belongs to Joey, a former soldier decorated with medals for bravery. Reese begins monitoring Joey, who works as a hotel groom. "You look fabulous, Mrs. J," Joey says with charm. Soon, Joey sends a cryptic message to an unknown number and abruptly leaves work. John follows him, and they end up at a bank. Joey dons a mask as his accomplice enters, committing a robbery. John is pinned to the ground, unable to intervene. When a guard tries to grab his gun, John stops him, warning it's a bad idea. After the robbery, Harold is eager to close the case, suggesting they turn Joey in before someone gets killed. But Reese is determined to understand how a decorated soldier ended up in this life. Joey doesn't seem like a killer, and John wants answers. Reese watches Joey closely and uncovers his connection to a network of former soldiers involved in robberies. He gathers the information needed to craft a convincing cover story and meets Sam, a former sergeant who owns a bar. Reese claims he's looking for high-paying work, mentioning a deceased Marine friend who recommended Sam. A few days later, Finch orchestrates the arrest of the team's driver, creating an opening for Reese to join the crew. "We got weapons here, shotgun," one of them says. Reese attends his first meeting with Joey and the team. Meanwhile, Carter reviews the bank footage and notices John's back, realizing he saved the security guard by stopping him from grabbing his gun. When Reese meets Harold again, he insists Joey isn't a killer. "It's one thing to kill in war," Reese says, "and another to kill innocent people." Reese pretends to bump into Joey randomly, asking when their next job will be. Joey explains it depends on Sam, who gives the orders. The two grow closer after picking a fight with two bankers. Reese subtly probes Joey about his personal life, knowing he's connected to two women. Joey, however, keeps his private matters to himself. Joey brushes off Reese's questions, simply saying he has obligations to take care of. A few days later, the gang calls Reese for a mission. Meanwhile, the police uncover the identity of one of the gang members. The group targets an underground gambling site owned by the mafia, pulling off the heist just before the police arrive. Sam prepares the team for another job, but Harold believes it's time to shut them down. Reese, however, asks for more time. He's learned Joey's motivations. One of the women Joey is connected to is his girlfriend, while the other is the wife of his war buddy. Joey is determined to provide for his buddy's daughter, ensuring she grows up comfortably. His wife has just had a baby, adding to his responsibilities. Reese joins the gang on their next mission, stealing evidence related to a case involving someone named Elias. Finch discovers Sam is setting the team up and warns Reese. When the gang hands the case files to Sam, he betrays them, killing everyone except Joey. Reese saves Joey and advises him to skip town. Later, Reese finds Sam dead, the case evidence handed off to an unknown person. After the chaos, Harold decides it's time to visit a doctor. While he complains of back pain and needs pills, his real goal is to steal Dr. Tillman's hospital radio. The machine has flagged her number, and the team must uncover what's going on with her. John begins watching Dr. Tillman and quickly realizes she's a lonely person, consumed by work with little time for fun. One night, Tillman decides to go out, and a man hits on her. When he tries to follow her, Reese intervenes and takes care of him. Back inside the club, Reese notices a man named Andrew who had bumped into Tillman earlier that day. Reese bumps into him in return, discovering Andrew is carrying drugs. From the bartender, John learns Tillman visits the club alone every night, likely catching Andrew's attention. The next day, John breaks into Andrew's apartment and steals files from his computer. Reviewing them with Harold, they uncover Andrew's predatory nature. He constantly seeks opportunities to exploit women. Andrew also has a criminal record from college, though it's been officially erased. Meanwhile, Carter reviews footage from John's team stealing the case file. She notices one of the thieves briefly interacted with Harold, exchanging a few words. That night, John watches as Andrew approaches Tillman at the bar, They share a brief flirtatious encounter before leaving. Andrew invites Tillman to his house, but she declines. As Andrew walks away, Tillman follows him, using a camera to zoom in and observe his movements. John calls Finch, revealing that Andrew isn't stalking Tillman. It's the doctor who's stalking the banker. John enlists Fusco's help to retrieve Andrew's old file. Reading it, John pieces together the story. In college, Andrew was accused of sexually assaulting a young woman, but the charges were dropped because she reported it 2 days too late. Later, the girl overdosed on drugs. She was Dr. Tillman's sister. Now Tillman is seeking revenge. The machine flagged her number because she plans to kill Andrew Harold. Meanwhile, receives a visit from Carter, who asks what the robber told him. Harold lies, claiming the robber told him not to stare. John continues his investigation, discovering Tillman has purchased chemicals to dissolve Andrew's body after killing. John's plan is to make Andrew disappear, preventing Tillman from executing her revenge. Reese orchestrates an accident using Andrew's car, loaded with drugs. The police arrest Andrew, but he's released the next day. Reese is frustrated, but Fusco explains Andrew's wealth and powerful lawyers make him untouchable. This guy has 4 lawyers, with suits more expensive than my yearly salary, Fusco says. That night, Tillman breaks into Andrew's apartment, tasing and drugging him. She wheels him out in a wheelchair, loading him into her van. John intervenes, confronting Tillman. "God, you've got him tied up in the back of your van," he says. Reese convinces her not to kill Andrew, arguing that doing so would destroy the best part of herself. "You're not a killer," he tells her. "You're someone who helps people." Reese takes Andrew to a secluded location, where the two have a tense conversation. John wrestles with whether Andrew deserves to live. Can people change? Or are they bound to repeat their mistakes? He wonders if there are still good people in the world, or just good decisions. Ultimately, John asks Andrew to help him decide his fate, and the episode cuts to black. A few days later, the machine provides a new number. Samuel Gates, a Supreme Court judge known for his fairness and tough stance on crime. John begins surveilling Samuel, noticing several men tailing him. One of them pulls out a phone, sends a message, and tosses it into a dumpster. John retrieves the phone and reads a message about Samuel's son finishing school. "We've been following the wrong person," John realizes. "I think we've been following the wrong Sam Gates." At the same time, a group of men attempts to kidnap Samuel's son. Reese intervenes, engaging in a brutal fight. Just as he gains the upper hand, one of the attackers pulls a pistol and shoots him. Reese drops unconscious as the kidnappers take Samuel's son. Soon, the judge receives a call from the kidnappers, who inform him they have his son. They instruct him to wait for their next call and warn him not to involve anyone. Devastated, Samuel is left helpless. John, recovering from his injuries, decides to step in. "Who are you?" Samuel asks. "I'm here to help," John replied. He explains that the kidnappers will keep the boy alive as long as he's useful to them. Samuel demands to know who John is, but Reese brushes it off, saying he's just someone trying to help. The two head to the judge's house, where Samuel wonders how the kidnappers bypassed his alarm. John advises him to wait for the next call while he investigates. He heads to the nanny's house, speaking to Finch on the phone. Finch is attempting to trace the kidnappers' call by hacking the cell phone company, but for now, he's unsuccessful. At the nanny's house, John discovers her body. It's clear the kidnappers extracted the alarm code from her before killing her. Later, Finch helps John locate one of the men he saw earlier. Reese confronts and beats him, uncovering a tattoo on the man's chest. It identifies him as a member of SP9, a gang originally from Eastern Europe that has now expanded to New York. That night, the kidnappers call Samuel again. They don't want money. They demand he drop the case against a woman named Angela. If she walks free, they'll return his son. Samuel reveals Angela's case is straightforward. She ran over someone and left the scene. Meanwhile, Finch uncovers that SP9 has expanded its operations to 18 countries, making them a formidable threat. The next day, Samuel presides over Angela's trial. He helps her case go well, but stalls as long as possible before making a decision. The gang boss calls, pressuring Samuel to stop playing games. Samuel insists he must do things the right way. Meanwhile, Reese interrogates the man he captured earlier, learning the location where the gang collects payment. He raids the place, finding $500,000 and taking down 2 guards. Finch listens in on a call between Angela and the gang boss, piecing together their scheme. Angela works at a bank developing software to detect money laundering, but she can disable it with a click. She's helping the gang launder money, and they use online payments to fund their operations, even paying off lawyers. The next day, Finch poses as a bank employee and steals information from their servers. As the trial continues, John searches for Samuel's son, but can't find him. With no news, Samuel is forced to acquit Angela. Not guilty on all charges, he declares. The gang boss calls Samuel, instructing him to pick up his son, but John knows it's a trap. When Samuel arrives, the kidnappers force him to say goodbye to his son. Reese appears with Angela, revealing her connection to the gang. She disables the bank's algorithm for 3 minutes every morning, allowing SP9 to conduct transactions. This is how she's tied to the gang. The gang boss realizes the operation is compromised. The operation's burned, he declares, ordering his men to eliminate everyone. A fierce shootout ensues, with the bad guys ultimately losing. Finch hands over evidence to a lawyer, ensuring Angela is sent to prison. Meanwhile, the police find her tied up alongside the gangsters. NYPD, anybody home? They shout. Reese's next mission requires him to pose as a driver to get close to the next person, flagged by the machine, Zoe Morgan. He pretends to be her new chauffeur. Zoe, cautious, calls the company to verify, but Finch answers, covering for John. Reese drives Zoe to a location where she pays for a gun. Back at her apartment, Finch discovers another gun. John notes that the only reason she'd buy a second gun is if it's untraceable. Zoe changes clothes, and John drives her to an event. He follows her, suspecting she might be the perpetrator. At the event, Zoe meets a high-ranking officer and hands him the gun. Their conversation reveals a police officer lost his weapon, and Zoe retrieved it to save him trouble. Later, John drives Zoe home, and she tells him to meet her tomorrow at 10 sharp. Finch asks John what he thinks is going on, and John explains Zoe is a fixer, someone who handles favors. In her line of work, she's made many enemies. Meanwhile, the police find the body of a man who was the main suspect in an old case involving a woman named Marlene Eli. Case file stolen earlier belonged to her. Carter speaks with the detective who worked the case, learning Marlene was a waitress at a mafia-owned bar. She had an affair with the boss, Don, and wanted him to divorce his wife. Tired of her demands, Don hired the now-dead man to kill her. The case was buried and the killer walked free. Marlene and Don had a son, who may have orchestrated the theft of the case file and killed the suspect, Zoe. Soon finds herself in trouble with Mark Lawson, heir to a pharmaceutical empire. He had her retrieve a recording of his illegal affair, but after killing the reporter who had it, he now wants Zoe dead to tie up loose ends. John intervenes, saving Zoe, while Finch poses as a major shareholder to meet Mark. Finch uncovers that Mark killed the woman he was having an affair with, but there's more. She was about to expose a scandal involving one of the company's drugs. John and Zoe break into the pharmaceutical headquarters, recovering deleted files. Finch discovers the company's new drug has a 3% mortality rate, 6 deaths out of 200 test subjects. The company likely paid off authorities to keep this under wraps and gain approval for the drug. Unfortunately, John and Zoe are caught and tied up. Mark prepares to kill them, but Zoe claims she emailed a copy of the report to a trusted contact. "Hope you don't mind. I emailed a copy to a friend," she says. Mark negotiates, and Zoe agrees to take him to the person holding the report in exchange for her life. Before they leave, Zoe slips John a paperclip, whispering, "You shouldn't have trusted me." John uses it to free himself, kills the guard, and rescues Zoe. The team exposes the pharmaceutical company's crimes, bringing it down. As they part ways, John tells Zoe to stay out of trouble. She replies, "That's not an option for me."